Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Daily Manhwas, and I hope you enjoy this video. This story takes place on the Mountain of the Five Tigers, where our protagonist, the immortal king and master of the Xuantian sect named Lai Mu Xuan, woke up from a long sleep. Long ago, the Xuanyuan continent was invaded by demons. He and his companions fought against the demons for a millennium. This battle lasted hundreds of years, so long that even the stars stopped shining, and the continent was completely destroyed. Only then were they able to kill all the demons. Due to the battle, he passed away. However, the fairy Luoxia and the monarch Beidong, with the hope of bringing him back to life, fused his body with the core of the Xuanyuan continent. After awakening, he truly doubted if he was still alive. When he emerged to the surface, he saw that everything had changed because he had been sleeping for many years. Upon stepping outside, he perceived that the spiritual energy of the Xuanyuan continent had fully recovered since all the demons were eliminated. After so much time had passed, he didn't know if his friends Beidong and Luoxia were still alive or if they had become immortal kings. His temple was located in one of the most famous places on the Mountain of the Five Tigers. Rumors said that he had died a long time ago, and his body was buried in some hidden place on the mountain. For the fortunate person who could find his body, there was the possibility of discovering a great treasure. Upon seeing the people, he quickly realized that in this era, nobody cultivated their kai. Moreover, the physical condition of the young people was lamentable as they didn't know how to harness the abundant amount of spiritual energy. He was truly disappointed, but the worst was yet to come. Near him, a 19-year-old student named Ling Feng was about to commit suicide. The people around were trying to stop him, but the student didn't listen and jumped. Those who committed suicide couldn't enter the cycle of reincarnation, but today was his lucky day as the protagonist had decided to save him. But when he jumped to help him, he realized that he couldn't fly, and as a result, he fell to the ground alongside the student. He didn't know what was happening since he was the great immortal king, but now he couldn't even do something as simple as flying. To check what was going on, he decided to enter his inner world. His core had become extremely violent because his immortal body had been damaged when 3,000 small worlds were destroyed, causing his cultivation to descend to the mortal realm of Kai rebirth. The spiritual energy turned into liquid and gathered in the sea. Once the sea of energy was ignited, he was capable of destroying worlds like this dozens of times. With his current energy, it was impossible for him to bring back the student, so he decided to preserve the student's body and soul to revive him after regaining all his power. Using his soul-searching technique, he managed to see the memories of the student. This young man suffered from a severe illness and didn't want to cause problems for his family, so unfortunately, suicide seemed to be his best option. Due to the passage of time, the sea had changed and the worlds had disappeared. The Xuanyuan continent had turned into the blue planet, and because of this, all his past friends no longer existed, and humans had forgotten how to cultivate energy to achieve immortality. This was the reason why the spiritual energy of this world was so dense. The spiritual veins were nourishing the entire planet with spiritual energy, and the core of the continent had the role of regulating the energy of the spiritual veins. This world had so much energy that the core didn't have much time left before it would explode. While he slept, the spiritual energy of this world was pouring into his inner world. Thanks to this, he was able to survive when he was on the verge of death, but also because of this, his energy cultivation had fallen from immortal king to the realm of Kai refinement. The suicide had caught the attention of the police. As they approached the scene, they came across the protagonist. At first, they suspected him because he was wearing the same clothes as the second young man who had jumped. But they ignored him because it was impossible for him to still be alive after jumping off a cliff, and the clothes he was wearing were very popular among young people. In one part of the mountain was the Xianqi residence. This residence was built over 2,000 years ago, since the beginning of the first generation of immortal masters. It held the title of the oldest Taoist place in the region. The current master of the Xianqi residence was an older man named He Yuanfen. While he was guiding the visitors like any other day, suddenly his disciple came running with terrible news. He told him that 2 people had committed suicide by jumping off a cliff in their Wuhu mountain. Due to this problem, he cancelled the visit. The video of the 2 young men jumping had quickly gone viral, and now people believe that Wuhu mountain was cursed. 1 suicide was bad luck, but 2 were too much for the family's reputation. From now on, it wouldn't be easy for the master to convince any guests to invest in the residence. Yuanfen watched the video more closely and saw that one of the men resembled the great immortal king. At first, he thought the video was fake, but his disciple clarified that he was present when the 2 young men jumped. After a long time, the immortal king had reappeared. He used to tell a story to his new disciples, saying that a fairy was buried in Wuhu Mountain, and the immortal master's mansion had been protecting the tomb for many generations. although his current disciple thought he made up these stories due to excessive alcohol consumption. The story he used to tell began with a scroll. When his master handed him this scroll, he told him it was the treasure of the immortal master's mansion. This scroll was impervious to water and fire, so he entrusted him with the mission to keep it in a safe place. At that time, he was young and exuded a lot of energy, so he didn't believe his master's words and tried to set the scroll on fire. As a result, the mansion caught fire, his master lost his life, and he burned part of his buttocks. To verify if the man in the video was really the immortal king, he went to the mansion where he kept the scroll. By comparing the photos, he realized they were like two peas in a pod. His disciple thought it was just a coincidence, but Yuanfan was sure it was him since he always had the scroll with him and hadn't shown it to anyone. The only thing he could do now was to trust that the legend was real because it was the only option to see his master again. The protagonist was near a river, and it didn't take long for him to realize that the water was trembling too much because the sky was entangled. The sky was angry, so it threw a lightning bolt that struck a tree nearby, and an eye appeared in the sky telling him that it was the sky and he no longer had the right to exist. The angry protagonist replied that if it wanted a fight, it would have won. Upon hearing his voice, the eye suddenly disappeared, understanding the difference in power. He soon realized that the sky was a kind of illusion created by someone who was trying to dominate the world. Although returning to the peak wasn't very difficult for someone like him, the problem was that to release his world from the Earth, he had to sever the connection between the core of the small world and the Earth. After this, there was only one more step to reach the status of an immortal emperor, and at this level, no one would be his rival. The only problem with severing the connection between the small world and the Earth was that the massive energy of the Earth would have nowhere to go, causing a spiritual explosion that would bring about the end of this world, and 99% of living beings would be extinct, and civilization would also suffer a catastrophe. This world had a grand network system and several interesting games along with a portable communication device. He thought it would be a shame if this world were destroyed. He had fought for hundreds of years against evil spirits from other worlds in the Xuanyan continent, and now that he had awakened, he wanted to find a way to save the Earth. So, he decided to postpone his mission to reach the peak. In the past, he had embarked on the journey of continuous training to level up in the training zone. Thanks to this training, not only did he improve the efficiency of cultivating energy quickly, but he also evolved all his kung fu attributes. But now, due to the influence of the core of the continent, the aura of the Earth and the aura of his small world had integrated for a long time, and now all his attributes matched. If there were enough monks on Earth with the same skills as him, they could help him by sharing some of their auras, and in this way, all his original attributes could be restored. Using the Tianyan mirror, he knew that he needed 100 monks who could enter the Xuanqian training zone and reach the Kai level. From this level onwards, he could help them train more. This was the most feasible method for him currently. Finding 100 monks was a piece of cake, but asking them to train for him would be very complicated. The higher the rank, the more difficult it was to achieve and progress to the next one. To restore cultivation, he needed the help of the 100 monks. In the most glorious moment of the Xuanyan continent, finding 100 monks was a difficult task, but now it was almost impossible because no one trained on Earth. But he didn't want to give up because in the past, he had managed to eliminate all the evil demons that invaded the continent. He had a long way to go. First, he had to re-enter the Earth, regardless of the era or the young people's ability to learn and accept training. If he truly desired to change the world, he had to first change the young ones. While he prepared to begin his search, Yuanfan and his disciple came to him because they had been waiting for his awakening. They handed him the scroll, and he checked it to see that it was indeed him. This portrait was made by Luoxia, who refined a small world of his own to create the immortal portrait. Since Beidong and Luoxia were no longer alive, humans were in a terrible state. Yuanfan wanted to follow him everywhere as they had been waiting for his return for a long time. Just as he was about to start looking for the monks to go to the training zone, he met these two people, which was a pretty good start. However, their spiritual power was quite poor and they had a limited foundation. He didn't have much hope of cultivating and leveling them up in their lifetimes, but he could accept them as his disciples. The old Taoist priest seemed to be an immortal being, so it was feasible for him to always be first in his mission and promote the cultivation method for him. Normally, he didn't like people following him, so he gave them the Xuanqian Kai book to then check if the two met his expectations. Now he intended to head to Lujing University, but since he couldn't fly, Yuanfan decided to take him in his car. As they passed through the city and saw the tall buildings, he couldn't help but think that the buildings were like cages for animals. Yuanfan recommended him to change his clothes since the clothes he was wearing were too flashy, and also bought him useful items for the start of his classes, such as a cell phone and a laptop and a tablet, and also linked his credit card to his cell phone so he could buy everything he wanted. As a token of gratitude, the protagonist gave them a painting. This painting was a magical weapon that would allow them to stay safe by channeling some spiritual power. While passing through the entrance of the university, all the students were impressed by his beauty. When he arrived at the registration office for the computer science program, he was attended by the professional at receptionist named Jiang Nai and a second-year student named Lai Jialiang. Jiang Nai told him that his name was not on the list. Upon hearing this, he used his powers and modified the laws, changing the photo she had on the list. Since the core of the earth was within Lai Muxuan's body, he could even modify the earth itself if he wished. The words he spoke held the will of the earth, making it very challenging for ordinary people to challenge him. Jiang Feng ordered Lai Jialiang to guide him to his dormitory. As they were on their way, the protagonist came across to Hang Jai-king, a third-year student. She had the core of the moon. Lai Jialiang suggested him to forget about her since not only was she the most beautiful girl in the entire university, but she was also the daughter of the richest man in the city. Her father had sent several undercover agents to protect her from stalkers. Her current partner was Zhang Tianhao, who was considered the basketball prince. He had rejected invitations from much better universities just to be with her at the same university. Ling Zai was the main disciple of the Xuanchen sect, and the core of the moon was the spiritual root of heaven and earth. Needing someone like her was extremely rare. She looked like Ling Zai and had the same spiritual root, so he couldn't help but think that she had reincarnated. She was one of the most suitable candidates to become a monk and cultivate energy for the immortal king. Hang Jai-king had the feeling of having seen the protagonist somewhere before. When they arrived at his dorm room, he met his new dorm mates, Luo Yang, a physical education student, Liu Hongquan, a literature student, and Zhang Zihao, a computer science student. Now that everyone had arrived, Luo Yang decided to proclaim himself as the leader of the dormitory since no one else wanted to be the leader. After 2 months of studying, Lai Muxuan managed to gain a general understanding of this world. He understood that it was a world dominated by technological development, and there were too many religions in this world, causing Taoism to decline. Humans no longer resisted birth, aging, sickness, and death. They now accepted their fate against the heavens. Throughout history, there had been many people who had cultivated the eyes of Lai Muxuan. Despite the bull tamer not possessing spiritual power, Muxuan considered his knowledge of the world to be on par. His perspective was similar to that of a cultivator. In his era, every immortal cultivator was rebellious and wanted to surpass themselves. If the path of heaven were not overshadowed, there would be 2 immortal kings in this world. In the library, Jai King and Jiuling were also present. Most of the guys in the library had come just to see Jai King, but she had come to see the protagonist. As she approached him to talk, she suddenly began to faint. But just before she hit the ground, the protagonist appeared and caught her. When he took her hand, he saw that her aura had taken on a liquid form, and her meridians were in disarray. This was because she had been asleep for a long time. The core of the moon was the spiritual root of heaven and earth, so it absorbed spiritual energy independently and converted it into spiritual liquid. Without a special cultivation method, it was impossible for a mortal body to contain too much spiritual liquid. Her body didn't have much time before it would be corrupted by the spiritual liquid, so he used his power to help her with her cultivation. She now felt much better, but he hadn't finished helping her yet, so he recommended her to visit him after a good nap. He was amazed that she had managed to survive for so long with the spiritual liquid flowing in her body like that. By saving her, he couldn't help but attract the attention of all the students in the library, who were jealous of him. Yuanfan had already mastered the early stage of the Kai rank, and they could now walk on water and ride any cloud. The old man started live streaming to show his master everything he had learned. Since it was a public broadcast, people from all over were watching. Most of the viewers believed it was a hoax since it was impossible to walk on water or climb a wall like an ant. Yuanfan was trying to promote the protagonist's book, and upon seeing this, the viewers thought it was a form of publicity to promote his books. The protagonist confirmed that what they were seeing was real and not a hoax, but one of the users started mocking him. Angry, he set out to find that person, and that day, the earth was almost destroyed as he tried to locate the user. After several days, the Wuhu mountain was receiving a great response thanks to the master and his disciple. Today was the day the old man was going to challenge the Muay Thai champion, and all the spectators believed that the old man wouldn't last more than 8 seconds. The fight began, and the great Muay Thai champion was defeated in 1 second with a Kai-ranked punch. The old man celebrated his victory and promoted the book once again. However, at that moment, the live stream was suspended from the entire network for violating the rules. Zhang Zihao, the protagonist's dormitory mate, managed to download the video before it was erased from the entire network. Immediately after they blocked the live streaming room, he quickly searched for the video on other websites, but in the end, he couldn't find anything. Someone with a lot of power had removed the videos from the internet. He had seized the opportunity and downloaded the videos by hacking the platform. After downloading the videos, he watched them frame by frame. After watching them for several hours, he came to the conclusion that the videos were not a hoax and that everything that was happening was true. The reason they were blocked was that they were trying to promote the book called Xuanchen Training Zone. Yuanfen notified the protagonist that his live stream had been blocked due to numerous complaints. He used his power and immersed himself in the core of his planet. Thanks to the live stream, there were already 87 monks who had read the Xuanchen Training Zone and had reached the Kai rank. One of the greatest leaders on Earth said that once a single spark could start a fire, the fire of immortality had already been ignited, so it wasn't easy to extinguish. Since ancient times, humans had a dream to achieve longevity and maintain a youthful appearance. Even though humans had accepted birth, aging, sickness, and death, no one could resist the temptation of longevity. Suddenly, one of the professors called them and informed them that Luo Yang had been injured while playing basketball and was currently undergoing surgery at the hospital. In the evening, they went to visit him. The operation was successful, and his life was no longer in danger. However, due to the spinal cord injury, his lower limbs were weaker. Knowing that he couldn't use his legs, Luo Yang was considering changing his career and continuing his studies. He was a tough guy and didn't care about what had happened to him, he just wanted to move forward. The protagonist wanted to accept him as a disciple. Using his powers, he saw that there was a needle stuck in Luo Yang's spine. Using his powers, he removed the needle, allowing Luo Yang to regain the use of his paralyzed legs. The Yin Needle was a magical weapon refined by monks who had surpassed the Aura Foundation. It was a hidden weapon used by common people and low-level monks. Those who were attacked with the needle didn't feel the slightest sensation. After being hit with the needle, they became paralyzed, and some even died. Hang Jai King had managed to survive until now with the Moon Core. He Yuanfen and his disciple were prohibited from promoting their cultivation method, and Luo Yang was attacked by a needle while playing basketball. All these events were linked. Some time ago, Luo Yang was having an incredible match. His jumping ability was so good that he could surpass Zhang Tianhao. In the match, he covered Zhang Tianhao again, but after jumping, the lower part of his body immediately stopped moving. Because of this, he fell to the ground and fainted. Zhang Tianhao was a very familiar name to the protagonist, but he didn't know why. At the Xianxi residence, He Yuanfen and his disciple were visited by a man who could fly and was more powerful than the current immortal king. The man had come to find out where they had obtained the Xuanchen Training Zone book. Terrified, He Yuanfen revealed that the book had been given to them by the immortal king not long ago but did not disclose the location of the immortal king. The only ones who possessed and mastered the Xuanchen techniques were the Zhang family and the Ma family. The man believed that the Ma family had betrayed them and infiltrated the exercises. Angry, the man attacked them with a powerful ability, but to his surprise, the two managed to escape in time and went into hiding. They had escaped through the mist thanks to the techniques in the book given to them by the protagonist. He Yuanfen did not reveal their location, knowing that they would be killed regardless. After a while, the man found them again using his abilities. He Yuanfen anticipated the attack and poured some of his aura into the painting left by the protagonist. And just before they were attacked by the man, they managed to teleport in time. After seeing this magical weapon, the man was certain that the Ma family had betrayed them. He had left a mark on them, which allowed him to find them no matter where they hid. Zhang Tianhao had the best potential as a basketball player in the history of ZBA. He excelled not only in basketball but also in athletics. There were rumors of his relationship with Hang Jai King. He had rejected offers from top universities to be with her. Zhang Zihao had thoroughly checked his information and found some strange things. Almost all the athletes who competed against him never ended up well and were forced to retire. A few days after entering Lujing University, Zhang Tianhao had a confrontation with the former basketball team captain, and shortly after, Captain Lin Xiang withdrew from the university. The university concealed the true reasons for his departure, but several people found out that Zhang Tianhao had broken Lin Xiang's arm. Several months later, he competed against the best competitor in athletics, but the competitor broke his left leg during the competition and was forced to end his career at an early age. Zhang Tianhao was a very dangerous presence for anyone who wanted to compete against him, and it was because of him that their leader was now paralyzed. The needle had been extracted from Luoyang's body and was created by Tianhao. He had drained all the spiritual liquid from Luoyang's body. The protagonist sensed that the old man had used the teleportation magic weapon and quickly headed towards the location. The old man was injured and needed rest. The disciple explained that they were attacked by a flying man who came from the Immortal Master's mansion to inquire about the techniques, and the man attacked them when they refused to reveal the information. The protagonist quickly realized that the flying old man had already mastered the foundation stage, making his disciples no match for him. He opened a portal to his world so that the two could rest. In this world, they could only move through the forest, as going elsewhere would mean certain death, and even the Immortal King would not be able to save them if they get lost. In this world, there was the body of the young man who had jumped from Wuhu Mountain. The immortal king has kept his body to revive him after regaining all his power. The protagonist couldn't revive the dead. What happened was that this student was so lucky that before his soul completely disappeared, it went to his inner world. Because of this, he could help his soul to reunite with his body. As long as not to abandon university, Loyang decided to drop out of his physical education career and began studying computer science. He was a person with great mental strength, and the protagonist wanted to help him achieve immortality. After the old man's transmission was blocked, strange videos were posted on the forums, videos showing a disabled person walking again, a man saving a child from a car without getting hurt, and a prisoner with super strength destroying a cell. After watching the videos, they decided to try the methods explained in the book. The four of them began to meditate, and the protagonist used his power to transfer some of his spiritual energy to them. After becoming immortal, he gained a profound understanding of the heavens and the earth, which led him to create the Xuanchen Training Zone book. The most important thing was not to absorb spiritual energy but to adapt to the energy environment. Spiritual energy was like a wave, sometimes it came and sometimes it went away. The person who mastered Kai was like a reef on the coast. Their body was not moved by these waves. If a big wave came, they would survive, and if it was small, they would stay. Hong Quan and Zhang Zihao started feeling pain in their legs and became tired from using this technique. This was because not everyone could become immortal. Reality was cruel. Those who didn't possess spiritual roots were useless even if they learned various techniques. Their bodies couldn't contain spiritual energy, so their physical abilities were also poor. If someone tried to practice this technique, their body would be consumed. According to modern science, the presence or absence of spiritual roots was recorded in genetic information. If the user was immortal, it was almost impossible to modify this information. While they were meditating, thunder started to rumble. These thunderclaps came from their leader, and one of them tried to wake him up, but he was struck by lightning when he touched his body. Loyang possessed the spiritual root of electricity, causing the sky to fill with dark clouds and thunder. Sensing the danger, the protagonist left the room, and a giant eye appeared in the sky. This eye attacked him with a lightning bolt, but he managed to stop it. Despite being in the Kai realm, he still had this mortal body, which made the lightning bolts want to harm him. In the distance, an elderly man in his 75 seconds from the released crystal realm and his grandson were strolling. The old man immediately realized that an immortal was causing this catastrophe. The protagonist sensed his presence, and as the old man realized his terrible power, he fled at great speed, holding his grandson. The Xuanchen Training Zone book was going to change the world. Hong Quan and Zhang Zhao suspected that the book had something to do with the protagonist since these events started happening after he entered university. Loyang had accepted the electric root, and his entire body was surrounded by electricity. Now he could stand on his own, and to test the condition of his legs, he jumped and stuck to the ceiling due to the power of the electric root. Seeing Loyang's growing power, the protagonist couldn't help but think that he would surpass his own limits and enter the Kai cultivation stage. Loyang was his rising star. Finally, he had surpassed the first stage and already had 100 monks cultivating Kai for him. In the next stage, he needed to gather 100 more cultivators who mastered the Xuanchen Foundation technique. Gradually, he recovered his former power as he successfully surpassed Kai cultivation. His cultivation base was recovering too rapidly, causing small ruptures to appear in his world. His power was leaking through these cracks, and the old man and the disciple believed that it was the end of the world because something bad had happened to the protagonist. The planet Earth seemed on the verge of bursting. Birds were falling from the sky, animals were going mad, and people couldn't breathe. The protagonist returned to his world and sealed the cracks in time, restoring everything to normal. Loyang was now the possessor of the electric root and couldn't be ignored. After all, he was still his roommate, so he couldn't know his true identity. He ordered the old man and his disciple to help Loyang establish his cultivation foundation. The three students were surprised to see the old man and his disciple in person. The old man congratulated Loyang for successfully completing Kai cultivation. Loyang decided to leave his studies for a while and train with them. He had finally understood who he had lost to in the basketball game. Their leader had left, and the old man didn't even pay attention to them. Both of them were jealous about Loyang's power. The protagonist appeared with groceries, but Hong Quan was upset with him because Loyang had left because of him. But Zhang Zihao recommended him that they should also read the book so that they could join them and contribute to the arrival of the new world. Jai King came to the men's building in search of the protagonist. All the men were in love with her and wondered who was the lucky guy she was waiting for. The protagonist was arriving at the building with his dormitory mates. As he approached, she fixed her gaze on him and thanked him for helping her at the bookstore. She had come to see him because the other day he had recommended that she visit him when she felt better. Since he didn't give her his number or address, she decided to come to the men's building. All the students were jealous that she had come to see an idiot like him. Ji Yuling clarified that she had only met him once in the library and nothing bizarre happened. The protagonist suggested going to a quiet place like the forest since there were too many people around. She became nervous and started thinking strange things. Upon hearing this, Jiuling insisted on accompanying her to prevent any inappropriate actions. But Jai King decided to go alone because she needed to discuss an important matter with him. Hongquan and Zhang Zhao felt like failures since first, their leader awakened his new power, and now the protagonist was getting along with the most popular girl in the university. The two of them went to the small Lujing forest, a sacred place for youthful love. Couples who had dates in this place ended with a special outcome. The students were furious and wanted to burn the forest, wanting to kill him. As they ventured a little deeper into the forest, he asked her if she felt chills in her body or fainted from time to time, and if in her dreams she always saw a very bright light growing in the sea. She was surprised because she had never told anyone about her dreams. He knew about her dreams because an old friend of his also suffered from the same illness and had managed to cure it and was still alive. This illness was very difficult to cure. Even her family's healer could only alleviate some symptoms. When she was 5 years old, she went to see a doctor, but after an extensive medical analysis, the doctor found no illness. So her father decided to take her to an old monk who recited a recipe that had been used by their ancestors. But no matter how many doctors examined her or how many medicines she took, she didn't feel better. Her condition worsened each year, and when she fell ill, she felt like thousands of ants were crawling over her body. Upon realizing that she wasn't improving, her father took her to Zhang Liu, an ancestor of the Zhang family, along with Tianhao. With a touch, Zhang Liu cured her of her main symptoms and recommended to her father to bring her to their house regularly to alleviate her suffering from these symptoms. He realized that she wasn't really sick, according to the cultivator, but rather someone had cursed her, and the old man was using her. The protagonist recommended her to close her eyes. By touching her forehead, he directly transferred some of his cultivation base to her, sending information about the moon's spiritual root and the 7 moon secrets technique to her spiritual knowledge. In this way, it would be easy for her to master the moon root. Phrases began to resonate in her mind. Tausida, lately nothingness is the absolute truth, the weapon embodies many changes, the Tao is invincible, people possess souls, souls that contain the Tao. After this transfer of information, she started feeling a sensation of warmth. This sensation was due to her body overheating from the newly acquired information. He had activated the moon's spiritual root within her body. All she had to do now was sit down, breathe, and meditate according to the techniques he had taught her. As she activated her root, everything around her started to freeze because terrible things always happened when the root was first activated. If Xiling, the former bearer of the moon's root, hadn't died, she would have become the immortal queen. Outside the forest, Zhang Yuanhu, a follower of Tianhao, called him to inform him that his beloved had gone to the forest with a stranger. Upon seeing the photos, Tianhao became furious, and all he could think about was eliminating the protagonist. Yuanhu and Tianhao arrived immediately. They didn't know that there were other Kai cultivators besides them in the university. This territory belonged to the Zhang family, and anyone who was a cultivator had to report to the Zhang family first. But for the protagonist, it was shameful to be a slave to a family that lacked freedom. Yuanhu attacked him, hoping to defeat him since they outnumbered him. Yuanhu used his best ability called Tiger Fist and attacked, but to his surprise, his punch was stopped by the protagonist with just 2 fingers. He had so many resources around him and had trained for several years to reach a moderate cultivation level. The Immortal King thought he was a waste. With just 1 attack, he defeated Yuanhu, sending him flying several meters back. He could feel his power returning little by little. Tianhao had recently used part of his Kai cultivation, so he still had several days to recover. Currently, he had the same amount of Kai as Yuanhu, who was defeated with 1 blow. Tianhao's best option was to distract the protagonist until the experts from his family arrived. Tianhao told him that Han Jiking was part of his Zhang family. She had suffered from different illnesses since she was very young. Tianhao recommended not teaching her cultivation as it would only make her sicker. He proposed a deal. He wanted Jiking, and in return, he would pretend that nothing had happened. The protagonist refused. Tianhao couldn't allow Han Jiking's spiritual moon to awaken. He wanted to steal the moon root and transplant it into his own body using a forbidden technique. Tianhao used the 5 Thunder Talisman and attacked the Immortal King. Lightning struck his body, but his body was resistant to divine thunder. Tianhao was surprised that his attack hadn't even scratched him. He took out the needle he used against Loyang in the basketball game and quickly attacked the protagonist. However, he dodged it swiftly. Seeing that he had evaded it, Tianhao threw the needle at Jiking, but just before it hit her, the Immortal King was able to catch it in time and destroy it. It didn't take long for the protagonist to realize that he was the infamous Tianhao he had heard so much about. He was going to protect Jiking so she could continue cultivating according to the method he had taught her. Gradually, she was surpassing her limits, and Tianhao couldn't allow it. He took out a secret magical weapon called the King and Sword and swiftly moved toward her, pleading for her to stop or else she would face the consequences. When he attacked, his secret weapon was stopped by the Immortal King with just one hand. Using his power, he managed to capture Tianhao and warned him that if he attacked once more, he wouldn't hesitate to end his life. Tianhao was confused as he couldn't withstand his attacks even with his current level of Kai cultivation. He didn't have much time left for his ancestor to transplant the root into him, and with that, he would ascend as an immortal cultivator. Now, that hope was gone, so he took out a Juji pill and swallowed it.